It's a delight to introduce and set the stage for Allan and Christine to lead our time, and just something to appreciate the spirit of integration that they bring, and having just a pause right now and just acknowledging their spirit before they actually begin. Maybe just breathe for a moment and let's just relax in place. Just take a couple of breaths on your own. And as we do so, we begin to trend in spirit. And as we trend in spirit, it allows us to come together, to listen, to perceive the word of the Lord coming through Allan and Christine. So as we open our minds and share in this way, Allan, you'll begin our time.
Well, greetings to you all from the great green north. All the white is now gone. I marvel here at times at how quickly the natural world gets together and does its thing so quickly, because in a sense it knows it has little time. The intelligence behind that is something to behold. We've had a lot of rain here recently, which is a little bit out of the ordinary, which has certainly helped this process. The expert weather forecasters had been predicting severe drought conditions in this area. I've got a feeling they might be wrong about that. I'd like to begin with the story of how I arrived here to speak with you this morning. A little while ago, I attended a conscious, healthy aging event with Steve Ventola, in which we considered the topic of conscious elder leadership. In our dialogue discussion, I made reference to a transcript of a class session posted on the Great Cosmic Story with Yolanda, which dealt with our relationship to factors and trends in the world body. I mentioned that I had read over this transcript that morning and had been thinking about its implications when it struck me like a bolt of lightning that in about a half hour's time, President Biden would be giving his State of the Union address. So I brought this to the attention of the group. I believe that we all, in that moment, realized that here was a synchronistic, very significant, trending worldly event, which was bringing to focus in a timely way elder leadership. I had personally been following some of the media hoopla and buildup to the event, highlighting such things as a great concern about President Biden's age, 81, and his declaration to seek another 4-year term. Oh my God. There was a reoccurring video of him stumbling on the ramp stairs up to Air Force One. The same video being played on different networks. There were clips of him sometimes stuttering in his speech and mixing up names of countries and world leaders. After all, there's only 193 to remember. I never heard any mention of the fact that he had suffered from a speech impediment as a child and has had to work with it ever since. Though that information has been widely available. It seems nowadays to make a more enticing news story, you just leave stuff out. He was seen walking slowly and deliberately like an old guy, no longer nimble and flexible. Although his wife describes him as still a great dancer. Well, I'm aware that others from our gathering made a point of watching Biden's address. I received emails from some afterward, in the awareness that he had to have been under tremendous pressure. Firstly, with concern from many in his own orbit that he might flub it somehow and substantiate the negative hype and affect his party's aspirations. Not to mention the opposing interests who were likely holding their breath in anticipation of an awkward and validating moment. Well, as it turned out, as you may know, and I would say, Joe stood tall and delivered as close to 33 million watched. He was, I thought, calm, composed, upright, and very deliberate and encompassing in his words and demeanor. In short, presidential in a wise elder sort of way. Well, I have not since seen or heard any more reference in the media, either verbal or rerun video, to the president's supposed infirmity in either speech or physical capability. I must say that Joe now appears to look much more vibrant and assured, almost as if some unseen, incredible energy and lightness of being has enveloped him. But I won't speculate. Apparently, his opponent expressed concern that he might have been on some kind of illicit drug. Yeah. My radiant participation in viewing this event had very little to do with the politics or any outcomes. I was there out of concern for his well-being in providing leadership in the face of the ugly, distorted, and disrespectful vibrational currents whirling around it. I did hear clearly, however, the president's reference near the close of his speech to the core values that should define America: honesty, decency, dignity, and equality, with no safe harbor for hatred, resentment, revenge, and retribution. Now, I must say that I did a bit of a double take when I first read Yolanda's class paper. In this particular instance, my computer mouse was almost like the cursor on a Ouija board, as it seemed to glide itself to this post and exclaim, "Read this!" And I obeyed. I couldn't recall having ever, over the years of my spiritual education, heard such strong emphasis placed on awareness, implications, and analysis of trends in the pattern of world consciousness. I even went back to my class notes of 1979 to check, and we hadn't looked at it at that time. So the following day, I received an email from David Barnes commenting on the previous night's gathering, and that we had unfortunately run out of time to delve as deeply as we would have liked to into the awareness of elder responsibility in radiation relative to factors at work in the world body of humanity. He then asked if I'd like to focus the Temple of Light service along these lines of thought, and here I am, and here you are. I've asked Christine to join me as well. We plan to provide ample time here today for your insights and thoughts around what we feel is a vast and timely consideration. Perhaps we could describe this time provided as an open forum to delve more deeply into these factors. So, I wish to make use of Yolanda's class session, which is available in its entirety in the archives of the greatcosmicstory.com. This session is entitled Factors at Work in the World Body of Humanity. It's entitled, Factors at Work in the World Body of Humanity. I don't plan to read out the whole paper, but wish to offer you a summary designed to maintain the tone, proportions, and essence of the original text. I've approached this with great care and appreciation for its origins and significance. In this session, Yolanda began by emphasizing that we, no matter what our sphere of service, need very much to be aware of the trends of movement in the world pattern. not only persons and groups and communities, but nationally in particular, and also other nations in the world, so that we may be able to function intelligently in relation to the vibratory factors in the world body of humanity. Not so much from a political standpoint, but because we are a part of the world body of humanity, and we are primarily here to serve the world body. We must be able to comprehend, analyze, and appreciate the factors at work. As an example, Yolanda read an article from the Denver Post, which outlined political, economic, and social dynamics being created by Chairman Mao and the Chinese Communist Party in 1954. And the chaos and far-reaching implications for the world body of mankind, and interestingly, for the body of the Son of God in particular. He portrayed communism and fascism as malignant growths in the world body consciousness. And although something of the fascist tumor had been removed, the roots were not, and it was still present. So ultimately and fundamentally, in relationship to the world body, as he put it, we are dealing with an incurable disease. And as he stated, only under the hand of the great physician can the world body begin to be healed. He emphasized that only through purity of heart can we cease to continue to support these tiny rootlets of that which appears in extreme and malignant form in world events and trends. This healing within ourselves is the only way by which we are of any value in extending the hand of the great physician into the world. He highlighted how religious concepts have basically represented deviations and tangent patterns, and that only as we have come to reach a point where we truly recognize the nature of these variations and deviations, can we intelligently and wisely work to correct them. And I quote, "Merely acknowledging them, merely seeing them is of no value. Attempting to arbitrarily upset them or override them accomplishes nothing. We must learn how to deal wisely with them. Well, of course, it's been 70 years, and certainly much has changed in the outer world, to say the least. For instance, the world population then was about 2.7 billion. We're now at about 8 billion. The world population has almost tripled in 70 years. One generation. We could spend a lot of time considering such massive outer changes. There are many, as I'm sure we're all quite aware. In my preparations for today and my reading and rereading of this paper, it struck me that together in the now, we are bringing its essence forward as a refresher, shall we say, allowing this enduring vision and wisdom to find new voice, application, and expansion in our time. Or we might wish to say, updating, as was mentioned here a few weeks ago with Robert and Terry Kaufman. Well, one could say that not much has changed over these 70 years. Authoritarian communism is still very much present, though it has moved through many changes and cycles in its manifestation. The presence and threat of fascism has certainly not ceased to exist and appears to be smoldering around the edges of many Western democracies. Religious fanaticism and terrorist extremism continue to be almost everyday news items, sowing the seeds of conflict, war, and unthinkable atrocities and retaliations. I'm sure in understanding the principles of the spiral movement that we are aware of now dealing with these things at a new level. The incredible explosion of information and media technologies over the past decades certainly has come to define our times and has been reshaping the landscape of existing human consciousness exponentially. And for many, it appears to be overwhelming and all-consuming. But not for those who, as John Gray recently put it, assume angelic identity, not in theory or belief. We actually take true identity upon ourselves and become one being in human form. In this true identity, we can then encompass and work as required with the flow of current events in real time, knowing that we are able to function intelligently in relationship to the vibratory factors involved. Well, of course, in my case, at the time, I had the realization, along with others, that the president's speech had come to me specifically to work with the vibrational essences involved. Leadership, elderhood, ageism, respect, empathy, protection, and celebration of the articulation of essential qualities of character. We acknowledge always the angelic presence of the one who dwells in each person. And we're particularly delighted when the evidence of that presence comes forth to whatever degree. there is and has been in the past 8 years a continuing trend of men of elderly years playing in the fourth quarter to assume and hold presidential power in the US. Amidst a parallel trend of intensifying divisions between left and right and increasing extremes of opposing political ideologies. Of note is that the average age of a member of Congress is 61.5 years. In our Conscious Elder Leadership Forum, we reviewed qualities of true leadership, and in brief, I touch on these. Character and spiritual expression are foundational, age notwithstanding. They hold a place of large and deep perspective. They are not governed by their weaknesses and yet take no inordinate pride in their strengths. They remind and inspire all to that which is larger and deeper within themselves. They know that the creative power of love holds all things under control in the true government of the divine design. Another trend in consciousness that is looming is what has been outwardly termed the threat to democracy, particularly in the US, with growing concern worldwide around such movement. In Yolanda's teaching, there was, I feel, an implied concern for the implications of authoritarian and fascist-style movements, not only in world geopolitical fronts, but particularly on what we might presently refer to as our spiritual corporation, and all that it is connected to and with. After all, this body was conceived and nurtured in 2 democratic nations. Well, how would we comprehend, analyze, and appreciate the vibratory factors at play here, and indeed work intelligently with them? Before turning things over to Christine, I would mention one more trend that has exploded in concert with information and media technology, which is, of course, the kingdom of experts. As I recall, Martin used to have a definition of an expert, which he was known to make use of on occasion. X is an unknown quantity, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I offer a little update on this. X is a controversial and apparently chaotic social media platform. And a spurt is a knows-it-all, often with a book, who's great in the 10-yard dash. In other words, no endurance. A few years ago, there was a CBC documentary, that's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, called The Trouble with Experts, which highlighted a 20-year study done on the actual results of predictions made by top experts. Not only did it find that they were simply wrong a high percentage of the time, but that the rate of accuracy was pretty much equivalent to chimpanzees throwing darts. Of course, I'm sure we all know what the real problem for experts is. It's the elephant in the room. Now, we all know what the elephant in the room is. And it used to be very small. But I think we see it getting larger and larger and larger in these days. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Christine.
I love that elephant. So good to see you all, be with you. It's been quite a month for me. Allan asked the question, how would we comprehend, analyze, and appreciate the vibratory factors at play in the world body, and indeed work intelligently with them? We talk about this all the time, and I'd just like to mention some of the ways that we do it, the ways that we take what was being said there and translate it in our world. One of the ways, and of course there's always more. We have not arrived there, but there's so much more. One thing that we do is we go on the peace vigils twice a week with Jeffrey. Many of you I see here come on as well. Wednesdays and Sundays, usually an hour after our Tone of Life or the temple presentation. Jeffrey Goldstein's been holding these for 7 months now, since the beginning of the war in Gaza. There's a texture of substance, I think that some of us would agree, that is present in that gathering, which changes constantly. Some people are present for most of the sessions. Some drop in, some just come in occasionally. This has included many of Jeff's clients and his friends from Israel, so you're really getting the essence of the vibratory factors that they're dealing with in the middle of a crisis situation. That is a setting unique unto itself with its own vibratory factors. And we're starting to discover that, I think, because we're conversing about that. The texture that I'm speaking of substance varies in each group. It's different in this grouping. If one opens one's heart to feel it and to feel all of you and your substance. But the vision and the love for the process is what we're about, and the deep sensing that we generate this together. Another way we've allowed the vibrating factors to come into play was with a refresher course with Chris Jorgensen on attunement. I can't tell you how updated and current that was, and I applaud Chris and all the others with him for truly and for so long working these factors. And it comes through in his knowledge and his understanding of this process of attunement, which for me was a complete update. Distance world attunement, what he calls the IPAT, is the International Planetary Attunement Team. And he emphasizes this towards the end of the course. And then further, he emphasized a process which I thought is really cool called liquefied attunement. We can all join by signing up on his website, which is IAAP, International Association of Attunement Practitioners. And there are many people that you would probably know who are on there and contribute. Chris says, quote, an example of participating in a vibrational field of stewardship for a few minutes is when you go to the gas station to fill up your car. You notice you're the only one at the station. Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, several people arrive to fill up their cars with you at the same time and location. Coincidence? No, he says, several creator beings have come together for a short time to bless, steward, and attune a vibrational or energetic divine essence for the planet, although they might not say that. As you and I live in a consciousness of liquefied attunement, the understanding of the nature, purpose, and blessing of the many divine being-to-being relationships above the crossover point can fill in for each of us. End quote. Another example I have of this is retail, which Allan and I had spent our whole life working in. Retailers know about this coincidence of converging customers. Restaurateurs know about it. And indeed, they don't necessarily maybe call it that way, but we all talk about it. They know it happens on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, monthly basis, yearly basis. In the store where I work, we talk about it all the time. Why is the store so quiet for so long? And then all of a sudden, there are almost too many customers to look after. Retail analysts have tracked these activity surges and have found that they occur at the same time in major stores throughout the country. That fascinates me. Here's a couple more of Chris's words. Beyond the scientific talk about the current solar event, I believe he was referring to the current aurora borealis that occurred. He says, I'm sensing a spiritual significance. To put it in a few words, I see the Creator via the sun sharing and intensifying attunement with planet Earth and humanity to restore and to establish once again the fullness of love's radiation to our planetary home. He says he's so thankful for IPAT, which is, again, I say, International Planet Attunement Team. This team exists under the guidance of Cliff Roberts as a way for a group of dedicated practitioners to share attunement on a daily basis. I know a few people who do that. Anyone who has trained or has had training in attunement and is interested in doing this planetary work is welcome to inquire about joining IPAT. Isn't that fascinating? Another important grouping that we have, as Allan already shared, is with Dr. Steve Ventola and the Healthy Consciousness Aging Program. During this process, Steve introduced us to a new, to me, association called PHJ. Peace, Harmony, and Joy Alliance. We recently attended a very creative and informative session with about 50 radiant people we had never met. Our very own Dr. Steve, where are you, is a part of the panel. And he likes to characterize such gatherings as expansion from core to periphery. I love that. This is a couple of their perspectives. They say that the problem is we're breaking apart. The way we demonize each other because of our different beliefs, what we call toxic polarization, is a huge threat to our families, communities, and countries. It is increasingly hitting close to home, causing breakdown from the dinner table to family vacations, from the workplace to worship services. We must reverse this trend. Sorry about that. End quote. We might say, what are the deeper vibrating factors present here? Their solution to this problem is to build a large-scale community to build connection. Facilitators around the globe endorse guided face-to-face conversation, and you'll probably notice I say conversation quite a few times in this session, across differences as one of the most powerful tools available to remove the biases, stereotypes, and misperceptions before they have the opportunity to rip societies apart. By engaging one-on-one and in small groups, we remind ourselves that the other is just like us, a person with family, friends, hopes, fears, values, and worth. National Week of Conversation provides a simple, powerful, and proven opportunity for Americans to gain this fresh and healing perspective, either directly or vicariously. Did you know that there was a thing called the National Week of Conversation? I'm wondering about the rest of the days. So this year it was from April 17th to 23rd in the US. This week right now it's in the US. It's in the UK, actually. The session that we attended with Steve was a part of that. Also, did you know there's a website called Awareness Days, where you can find out about many events happening around the world. Oh my gosh, right up my alley. If you want to see the plethora of wonderful stuff on the internet, it's available. The Beautiful News Network is one place I go quite often to find truly wonderful and creative acts, visions, and once again, conversations. There I go from story to story and find ones that connect with me. Talk about new language and reframing the world, which is their mantra. Launched on November 1st in 2016, Beautiful News Network is a content platform dedicated to unearthing, inspiring, uplifting, authentic voices that reflect the good in humanity, as well as the beauty of our destinations and our natural world. They say they gather stories by keeping a pulse on individuals and organizations that are making a positive impact through their ideas, actions, initiatives, and contributions. Beautiful News offers a platform to amplify their message because they believe that together we are stronger. It's these stories that will unite us as we create a community committed to positive action and change. Another aspect to this that we participate in is what we're still calling pods. That was generated out of the Tone of Life quite a number of months ago, actually. And we have a pod 4, it's 4 of us, and then there's a pod 8. I believe there's 8 of them. Or it might have been their number, I can't remember, Suzanne. We met up a couple of times, actually, and we'll continue to do so every once in a while. To me, these are highly engaging, rewarding times together, exploring further our work and our presence, and more than ever, our purpose here on Earth with each other. We have the best conversations. doesn't really matter what we talk about. We're together. I would also like to mention one-on-one conversations again, wherever two or more of you come together in my name. Allan spends much more time than I do connecting with news, magazine, TV, and online programs. He will often bring me the essences of a program he has just watched for us to discuss. A recent example was one on global wealth, which you might find fascinating, where it was revealed that just 1.1% of the adult world population, the highest wealth rung, now controls 46% of total global wealth. Billionaires now control 14.2 trillion, or 3% of total wealth. Yet there are only 2,780 of them out of 8 billion. Won't go into further detail on that, but think about that. But we look at the deeper vibratory factors of this, not just looking at it, but what are those? Hoarding of substance, greed and power, the never enough syndrome, and behind it all, of course, is fear in its many aspects, and serious identity issues. In the store I work with, as an aside, there are a couple of women who spend over $500,000 a year on clothes. Allan and I talk about all of this, and I am so thankful to have him in my life for so long, that we can share the deepest parts of ourselves, no holds barred. During a process such as this, we go back and forth with the vibratory factors until we begin to understand each other completely. Because quite frankly, when we started, I was like, what are vibratory factors? I mean, I know what they are, but how do I deal with them? And we talked and talked and talked until we came to this point. And although it may seem, a bit heavy in a way, I think it's good for us to really reach deep to see what these do. And so I would say, let's keep exploring. Let's keep each other connected with what we see that is going on. I would love to hear the things that you have in your world that you see as providing a place for these vibratory factors in the world body, and then offer something into them, offer something with you, offer something with other people. So it's been a pleasure, a deep privilege to thank you for letting me into your world twice in 2 weeks, and to be able to spend this time and to really create something of a positive and so needed expression. Now we're together.
So I guess the mics are going to open up, and we would certainly welcome your insights and experiences around what we've touched on here today. It's been great to be with you.
Well, thank you both. In addition to the great cosmic story, I have been also enjoying the Third Sacred School. And I noticed as I was reading over this weekend that Hugh, under Martin's hand, had dropped in some excerpts of Yoronda, just one-pagers that were quite zingy. And I read one that dovetails very nicely into what you've been presenting here. Yoronda basically was saying, if we are to be effective, we must face facts and issues without judgment. And I sort of thought of this as how if you had some pain or aberration going on in your own body, how would you know where to focus your attention and healing if you didn't have some signal? So this is not so much heavy work if we're not reacting emotionally, but we are just facing facts. And there are any number of facts out there in any number of people and topics. So this is quite timely and points to our greater works, I do believe.
Deborah, I really appreciate your point here. I was thinking along a similar vein, facing facts, being objective, being aware of one's own biases, and living as great a degree as possible in my own transcendent consciousness, where I can be aware of my own perceptions of truth based on my highest understanding of truth principles, the principles of truth. And let that continue to unfold. I also remarked on the latest Great Cosmic Story service, the specific focus on details and how important that is. And, you know, Christine, when you were talking about dealing with vibratory things, for me, it always comes down to what's going on in here. And what kind of energy am I putting out? And what kind of energy am I reinforcing by my expression in the little things? A perfect example, common, is Facebook. Now, I have a Facebook account, but I rarely go there. But I know a lot of people do. So what does a person post on Facebook, especially when there are world events? And I could give a laundry list, and I know you could too. What energy are you supporting by what you post on Facebook? Is it one of judgment, of criticism, of taking sides? Is that helpful? And I've always wondered, what does one try to accomplish by doing things like that? Because clearly, it seems to me, you're speaking to the people who already believe the same thing you do. If your intention is to trying to convince somebody else to see things your way, I'm not sure it's going to work that way. And I always come down to got to be transcendent, as high a degree as possible, to your highest understanding, and be open to seeing more.
Mhm.
Thank you for bringing that point up. I have always appreciated your keen intellect, Deborah.
Hey, Allan. Hey, Christine. I
Hi.
want to step in here and just appreciate you both so very much, the clarity of your presentation this morning. Beautiful spirit moving through your words so that the word itself is clearly perceptible in the stream of thought that you shared with us. I too has been taken up with this word trends.
Mm.
It's an important emphasis that you made, Allan. And Ann and I spend time like you do, Christine and Allan, many times every day, considering trends, happenings, events. Usually we start with the almost invisible and imperceptible sense of heavenly trends emerging in consciousness. That's generally our starting point in the mornings when we meditate together. What is emerging in the heaven that is shared by the spiritual members of the spiritual body of the Son of God, those who know their place in this formation. And that can very rapidly lead into a consideration of earthly events, worldly events and trends, and allow an easy discernment of accuracy of movement in alignment with heavenly trends that are appearing in the world. And there's a touchstone, really, and Yolanda mentioned it many, many times, that we can gauge and guide our considerations. Suzanne mentioned it last week as well, in the word magic. Yolanda called it the magic of life, or the magic of death, the magic of hate, or the magic of love, the magic of lies, or the magic of truth. In other words, the black magic triangle or the white magic triangle. And you can see in the expression of what's coming out of the world where there's an emphasis on hate, lies, and death that characterize those who are deeply involved in the patterns. It's good to face facts in this regard, and also face facts as it relates to those that you can see who are emphasizing love, truth, and life, and those qualities of character in their action and their function and behavior in the world. So we can fool ourselves, or we can face facts and recognize that there really is no such thing as an ugly truth. There's a lot of ugly facts, and there's a lot of beautiful facts that align with the beautiful truth and patterns of heavenly magic that are all around us in the world. And you've brought something so wonderful here this morning through your own presence and your own spirit and your own deep engagement in these things. And it's evident that you are paying attention to the trends in heaven, just like I am, and seeing how those correlate with what's appearing in the earth, and letting the heavenly radiation permeate it all. So love you both very much and appreciate your self-revelation and deep sharing with us this morning.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Allan and Christine. So graciously offering about what's actually happening on our earth today. We could say the real elephant in the room is us, because not many are talking about us and not many see us, perhaps. I am currently living in downtown Vancouver, and at one time I felt any city to be unkind and dangerous and all the rest, and I'm sure it is. But in the city I live within, this mass international city, where it almost seems like English is a second language, I meet people every day in which I share the spirit of us, in which I can easily and quietly share a kind, open, beautiful conversation about life, like the color of the elevator doors. I am so surprised at the kindness that has been shown me in Vancouver this trip around. I lived here, oh, I don't know, 40 years ago. And I believe it is because, I know it is because of the influence that the Spirit of God has had on the earth through many things, but in this case, through us. Through a community of people who move together, who don't criticize each other, but move together and know our place on this earth. You could say there's much to be done yet, and of course there is. We're still in a bit of a mess, aren't we? However, I must tell you, I have longed for a very long time for a service of this kind where we can share with one another all of the wonderful things that are opening up, because there are many of them and they are very, very pure, and they usually concern those who read and speak the word. We are making the word flesh on this earth as we speak. What a glorious thing that is, and how pleasurable it is. I must have 20 new friends in a month of living in Vancouver. That's a lot. And it's because I have the power of us, this community, and the power of true living behind me of elder years, many, many years, which we all have. It's wonderful to move in confidence through the mass crowds or alone, to move in confidence of that reality. And I thank you so much for what you have brought. It's wonderful to be aware of all that's going on in truth. Thank you so much, my dears.
Yes, awareness in truth, in the world, but not of it. Thank you so much, Allan and Christine, for inviting us to move with you in this wonderful substance that you've woven with your consciousness and your living together. How important it is for all the things that are on the move in the three-dimensional world to have a place to clear to. And that really isn't a matter of just ignoring it, is it? It's a matter of what you've demonstrated here. And I'm for one wowed by it, lifted up by it, and thrilled. This is the speaking of the word, and it's just a joy to be with you in it at this time.
I also want to thank you, Allan and Christine, for what you brought here. It was most excellent. You drew so many lights that you are tracking, trends that you are tracking, and brought them into this place. And some of these lights, these portals, I was not aware of. So that is beautiful. I think that one of the functions of being aware of these portals where the light comes in is that it allows the people who are participating to enter into a sanctification. And every time that's done, it just contributes to the generation of the heaven that is building and building in the background and through us. And that is the safety net for so many of the factors that are on the move in the world. Recently, I was working with an intensification, and I literally felt the body. I felt the generation that has been coming in, pouring in all these different ways. And it was palpable, like I felt lifted and held by it. And in that instance, I was just so grateful. And I know that this kind of thing is happening with everyone in the world. They don't know consciously that that's happening, but there's a certain modulation or moderating effect, by having this heaven that is being created right now. And what in the act of sanctification, I just want to say that one thing keeps coming back to me, and that is repentance. There's a certain element right now that's up, which is called accountability. And it's being talked about a lot. But I think for those of us who are working at these more essence levels, that we can identify that in our own close-in sanctification, there's a continual repentance that's taking place. And that instantly, when that happens, there's an opening up of the connection with the one whose world this actually is. And that beautiful power that moves through us is, I think, opening that particular element at an essential level in the heaven for the whole world. Because there seems to be a dearth of repentance or accountability happening. There's a lot of pride, there's a lot of polarization. So I just really appreciate your bringing this to us. I salute the living and the conversations and the what has brought this to us this morning. It's very obvious that there's a wealth of generation in your lives, that we're able to bring this to focus this morning. So very much appreciated.
Thank you, Allan and Christine and all. I feel this is a very excellent and important consideration, and I want to touch on an element that hasn't come out that much so far. And it's something that is captured in Grace's service, Grace Van Duzen's service, called Lightning Over the Treasury House. If there are any that haven't read it or haven't read it in a while, I recommend it very strongly. It's from 1960s, I believe. And it is about the macro control of the world by money. And in some ways, she points out effectively that we do not have democracy. We have the appearance and the facade of democracy. What is present is controlled by money at the outer level. And it is the movement of black magic in the world. It's controlled by money. And that was 1960s, she gave that service, but 7 years ago, an economist named Thomas Piketty in 2014 published a book which was quite remarkable. It was titled Capital in the 21st Century, and it effectively shows further, much more detailed proof of what Grace was talking about 50 years earlier, that the control by money has deepened rather than lessened. And now the key factor I want to point, and this is, I would say, something more significant than fascism or communism. And Martin repeatedly said, we do not have democracy. It is controlled by something else. And I want to point out one particular aspect of this control, and that is, it is something that outside of the United States, for example, in Korea, the population is much more aware of, and that is that the control by money is quite pervasive, and particularly that it controls the media, all the media, and that it has, that money has taken very strategic and deliberate steps to buy up all the media and control all the media. In America, I think there's much less awareness that how much this is in fact the case with American media also. And the reason this is important is because it affects our thinking, it affects our perception, and particularly the facts that are provided to us are filtered through ideology. So in being aware of world trends, I would suggest really reread Grace's paper, and through those eyes see the world patterns today. So on the other side of this, which this being the black magic, is the movement of white magic. And on that, there's no time, so we'll just talk about this other part for the time being.
Okay. Oh. Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, I suppose it is true. You're right, Eugen, about the issue of money and attention to money. And the thought it brings up in me is the antidote, or the other side. I don't know if you were going to speak about this regarding white magic, but where money is substance in the human world, we know about heavenly substance. And may I say, regarding the leadership, Allan, that you were speaking about, thank you, Allan and Christine both. Regarding the leadership you were speaking of, I am greatly appreciative of your substance, all of you who are part of our groups. So yeah, I have occasionally gone toe to toe with people on X, formerly Twitter, about political things, but what always comes back to me is how to release the greatest amount of substance into what I'm doing, so that I remain at home in heaven, which is where the substance originates. And one thing that it comes back to for me is where there are lies or exaggeration, to speak about the truth, as some of you have wonderfully mentioned today. That's where the power is, the reality as opposed to unreality in the world. And where there is self-centeredness, we know about love, the release of love. And so we're most blessed to know how life really works, the reality of life, and to share this with people we touch in the world. Thank you.
Eugen, I wonder if it would be fitting, I'll use that word. I've heard about the power of money and how it overall colors everything. And I'm so ignorant on this. I really don't. I was wondering if it might be the right thing or helpful, would be for me, just to have a clearer perspective on these things, so that I'm more aware of the invisible power that's going on there. So I would just ask you to think about that, and if at all possible, I certainly would welcome it.
Yeah. So this is what I mean about the conversations, right? They're wonderful. Eugen added just a whole other aspect to this. And these are the things that we can't be afraid of. Deborah, I was going to read part of that face facts service for my presentation this morning. So glad that came up. Mary, your comment about details, all of the further expansion, this is what, to me, true conversation is, with people who love what we do. And I've so enjoyed this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been just wonderful. And I'm so thankful to be in this beautiful temple substance with a group of non-experts. And I think all of us, when we have the opportunity to speak or present, it's not from that place, certainly, that we've got it all together or that we know everything. And that certainly was my feeling in what I presented. And it's wonderful to hear these insights and experiences that allow me to learn. We discern and we learn together. And I must say, this has been a wonderful experience in that regard here today for me as well. So thanks so much, everybody. And I guess over to you now, Steve.
Thank you, Allan and Christine. I feel we can continue our conversation for sure. This has really started something, and the vibration is still continuing, I know, in my heart. Something to take note of. Someone can be muted here. Someone's fine. I think just taking note of what we've shared and looking at the vibratory factors within ourselves, recognizing those, and that's where we first deal with the vibratory factors of the world. Something that struck me this morning is looking at the book of Revelation and the Church of Philadelphia. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. The word of patience. When we don't know, when our hearts are stirred vibrationally, we just pray, we know, just praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. And allow to come into the presence of the Lord to think wisely. And then we can receive our world upward. We're here to receive our world upward. Let's have a moment of devotion. Oh Lord, as our hearts are stirred in praise to thee, we sense thy white magic in the midst of this black magic world. And because of this, we have confidence and we have purpose and we have elder leadership, that thy way may be known within our own hearts, out from core to periphery, letting thy light shine, letting thy navigation be known, letting all be blessed that we're with, all for the glory of thy name, here again, now in visible expression through us. Yehovah. 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 In the stillness of this moment in our hearts and minds, let us affirm our reason for being alive in this day, glorifying thy name. In the glory of thy living Christ. Amen. Wonderful to share. Our next service will be June 23rd with Susanna Light and Carol Travis leading us. We look forward to that time.